Okay, so you've found the perfect home. Now we have to place a successful offer. What we want to understand first is, are you going to be competing against anyone else? In a seller's market, in some instances, we're left in a situation where you might have a bidding war on your hands. So it'll be important for us as your agent to work with the other agent and really learn what is the seller's position, and do we have other offers we're competing against, and is there a time crunch that we're going to be working under? So we'll work with you to help you understand what is a price for that neighborhood that is fair market value and where we feel that home could appraise based on your offer. In your offer, we'll also want to potentially have in place an escalation clause. When you're competing against other buyers, escalation clauses have become more common. You know, you're going to be putting together where your starting bid would be, but then you're also telling the seller how much over a competing offer you're willing to pay, and then we list what your max would be in that offer. So that way we know that we're paying only as much as you have to, but enough to make sure you could potentially outbid the next highest offer. If you're in a position with a certain loan type or based on your pre-approval, if we do have to ask the seller for closing cost help, that is something that's going to affect the seller's bottom line. So certainly it's going to weaken your offer a little bit. So you're going to be in a better position if you don't have to ask for closing cost assistance, but that's something we want to talk through when we're drafting your offer. Earnest money is the amount of money that you're actually going to put on deposit once you go under contract. Typically, I see that's around 1% of the sales price, but it doesn't have to be. Earnest money is really any amount of money that both you and the buyer or both you and the seller agree to. That's money that we would deposit. It gets applied to your purchase price at closing, but it shows the seller in good faith that you're going to do what you've said that you would do in the contract. If you default, that money could be at risk. In some instances, the more earnest money, the stronger you look as a buyer to the seller. So your offer may actually be looked at more favorably against another offer if you have more earnest money. Many different loans will have a little bit different length of time that will be required to get you through the underwriting and approval process. But I would say most loans you could close in 4 to 6 weeks. If you're a cash buyer, certainly we can get you closed within a couple weeks, if not even sooner. And some of those loans, like our VA loans, RD loans, those might take us just a little bit longer to get those extra approvals. So it's always nice to understand what the seller hopes timeframe-wise we could close and try to work that to their favor too if we can, especially if you're competing. Offering the seller some type of possession after closing can really put your offer in a stronger position. I have had many of my sellers look at 2 offers that are basically the same, but if one buyer is willing to give them a little extra time after closing to move from one house to the next, whether it be 1 day or even as long as 30 days, it could just be what makes the difference between you getting your offer accepted versus the other buyer. Other things that we want to think about are going to be the extra things that you want to ask for. So are you going to be asking for any of the seller's appliances? Usually we know what appliances the seller is willing to leave up front. If you ask for things that the seller hasn't been willing to give, remember those are things that could make your offer look a little less attractive. Many times we can do documents in person, or we can send them to you electronically for electronic signatures. We could work with you wherever you're at. Usually once we place your offer, we ask for a reply from the seller within about 24 hours, sometimes less in a really hot moving market, and sometimes longer. And sometimes we have to do what the seller requires. Sometimes they'll do a highest and best and they'll tell us when they want those offers turned in by. So we might be at the seller's mercy. There's certainly a lot to consider when you're putting together an offer, and a member of our team will walk you through each step of the way, make sure we consider everything necessary. Once you get your offer accepted, we'll talk about what happens next in video 3.